Good afternoon and happy November. We're getting right down to business here, doing it live, doing more at 4 weekday afternoons, right after Guy Benson at 3, and just before the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang at 5. It's Mottek On Money, live on the air, 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com, and your on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, kbc.com, Apple iTunes, YouTube, all your favorite podcast platforms. What a weekend with the Dodgers dramatically winning the World Series and celebrating big with a parade in downtown Los Angeles today. Congratulations to the team for an amazing series and World Series championship for the second year in a row. All this already having a big business impact in Los Angeles. Looks like an economic home run. I'll talk about that with Mark Wilbur later this hour, founding member and former chair of LA BizFed, chairman of Employers Group, and former associate dean of the USC Marshall School of Business. Mixed finish for stocks to kick off the new week and the month of November, coming off a winning week and month of October. Stocks moving in separate directions today, with the Dow down 226 points at the bell, the S&P 500 up 12, and the NASDAQ up 110 points. Big tech names like Amazon and NVIDIA at or near record highs as the rally continues in the AI space. The general optimism that we've seen in October continued in November here on this first trading day of the month. Amazon shares about 4% higher to an all-time high after the company struck a $38 billion deal with OpenAI that'll provide the ChatGPT maker the ability to use hundreds of thousands of NVIDIA chips. NVIDIA shares also in the plus column by more than $4 today at 206 and change. The earnings parade continues as well. And the more corporate deals, Kimberly-Clark announced it's acquiring Kenvue, creating a $32 billion health and wellness company. Kenvue, in case you didn't know, is the company that makes Tylenol. Kimberly-Clark agreeing to buy Kenvue for more than $40 billion, combining the makers of Huggies diapers with the owner of Tylenol, one of the biggest takeovers we've seen so far this year. According to the Wall Street Journal, this deal would create a global health and wellness company with annual revenues of about $32 billion and $10 billion brands, including Kimberly-Clark's household staples like Kleenex, Cottonelle, and Kenvue's products, including Tylenol, as well as Listerine mouthwash. The government shutdown continues, and the government said today it will use emergency funds to pay partial benefits under the Federal Food Assistance Program for November, but warned the process could result in delays in some states. Investors also keeping an eye on what's happening in Washington. The government shutdown continuing to delay key economic reports, including the jobs report that was set for release this week. And the U.S. Supreme Court is set to hear arguments this week on the legality of President Trump's most sweeping tariffs. And that's going to be a big announcement when that happens. The latest reports out today from the Institute of Supply Management showed the U.S. manufacturing sector contracted for the 8th consecutive month. And with a lack of government reports, the releases this week on the manufacturing and services sector could hold more weight than normal. Also, a new reading on consumer confidence. The University of Michigan Consumer Confidence Report will be coming out on Friday. Big election tomorrow here in California on Prop 50. California Democrats pushing for this. Republican Party's strongly against it. California voters heading to the polls tomorrow with just one yes or no question on the ballot. Passing Prop 50 would implement a new congressional map here in California. I'll talk about that and other key questions on ballots here as well as elsewhere across the country that could impact politics as well as tax policy. I'll talk about it. I'll talk about it with Patrick Gleason, Vice President of State Affairs at Americans for Tax Reform. But first, on your money, the markets, the economy, crypto too, which is chilling out, by the way, and the whole works now. Joining us live, Gabriel Wisdom, Managing Director at American Money Management and author of Wisdom on Value Investing. Gabriel Wisdom, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
Well, thank you, Frank. You know, as you mentioned, we're in the jobs data dark age here. Every month, the Bureau of Labor Statistics would publish an employment situation report that included employment hours and wage data for workers. And then they had an establishment survey of businesses. Some 121,000 businesses would report. Many of them would be late, but they reported, and we don't have that now. And one thing we are seeing from the latest private sector data is that the adoption of artificial intelligence and robots and maybe the government closure, more than likely the government closure, it's affecting headcounts at America's companies. and that's going to mean less money for the holidays. There'll literally be fewer people shopping in the United States this holiday, says one of our favorites, Ed Yardeni. Consumers that were surveyed the first week of October by the National Retail Federation had quite a different story to tell as well. One third of them expect to buy fewer holiday gifts. AI and robots are impacting jobs. That's good if you're on trend, and we saw it in the markets today with AI and data center spending.
One big week after another, one big month after another. October, which you noted at the start of October, it's traditionally certainly at least a nervous month for the stock market. It turned out to be a winner this time around. How would you size up the month of November here?
Well, I'd say, the point is that when you have a powerful trend, sure, it can evolve into a bubble. Bubbles are defined not simply by high prices, but by a collective belief that this time somehow is different. And we are getting that sentiment that, the bubbles are fueled by a sort of a mix of truth and exaggeration. There's real innovation, but there's layers of speculative enthusiasm. We've seen it with the internet bubble of 1999, the housing bubble of 2006, and perhaps artificial intelligence today. But right now, as they say, it's like musical chairs. The music's playing, and we are dancing.
All right, and we saw crypto dance pretty nicely up until just recently. Bitcoin hit an all-time high above 126,000. It's back down to 106,000 or so here today. Ethereum has also had some air taken out of it, down to around 3,500, just shy of 3,600 now. Doge at 17 cents. I know you're paying attention to what's happening in the crypto world. What are your thoughts about these latest moves here?
Frank, this is a very real trend. There's no question about it. But, the appetite for crypto has, it's receded somewhat. IREN, I think that's the way you now pronounced the name for Iris Energy. This is a crypto miner. It said earlier this year it's going to stop expanding its Bitcoin mining operations and prioritize on.
November is heating up for U.S. soccer.
The United States need to be a little more nasty.
Big international friendlies for the men.
Oh, Callum, that was nasty.
And a Black Friday friendly for the women.
Expectations have always been here for this team. We understand that.
Listen anywhere on the go with the Westwood One Sports app. And for behind-the-scenes stories, catch the U.S. Soccer Podcast.
Boy, do we have an episode for you.
Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
AI, cloud, and data center businesses, and sure enough, they made a deal with Microsoft, a $10 billion deal with the former Bitcoin miner IREN, symbol IREN. The stock has really taken up. It's up about 580% so far this year. It didn't do nearly anything even close to that as a Bitcoin miner. So, the cryptos have sowed the seeds of something very real here, Frank.
On the air live, Gabriel Wisdom with American Money Management, based here in Southern California. Also author of Wisdom on Value Investing. Turning now to analog gold. Gold hit an all-time high above around the 4,400 range. It's back down to around 4,000 here, 4,006 and change here. Silver also popped to an all-time high above 50 an ounce just a couple of weeks ago. It's back around 47 and change. What about the precious metals and the moves we've seen there recently?
At some point, I believe that you have to weigh out the value of commodities. What's the supply relative to the demand? And historically, there's been a gold to silver ratio that I found is pretty accurate over time. It's averaged about 50. In other words, it's supposed to take 50 ounces of silver to buy 1 ounce of gold. Right now, it takes 85 ounces of silver to buy 1 ounce of gold. So it's out of whack. So either silver is far too low or gold is too high, but I think it's one or the other, and I continue to like the metals here.
All right. And NVIDIA popping to record highs. Amazon hitting all-time highs. These big deals being announced here connected to AI and, of course, connected to the Mag 7 here. What are your thoughts about the Mag 7, including the Magnificent One, NVIDIA?
Well, we're in a data center super cycle, it's been called. The largest tech companies are really on a power-driven arms race of sorts, and it's all around the AI technology wave, and NVIDIA is at the center of it all. But these hyperscalers, as they're called, are the tech giants like Amazon, like Microsoft, Oracle is one now, Google, and so forth. And U.S. electricity demand has absolutely, it's exploded, and it's projected to be 5 to 10 times faster over the next 15 to 20 years. So, the tech industry might be overestimating just how much pressure the power grid can take. So I tend to like the picks and axes. In other words, the companies that can help these tech-heavy companies to run these systems. That's really what we're seeing today.
All right, and then we have a big M&A deal. We've been expecting more announcements like this, given the current environment, very business-friendly administration. And now here comes the word here that Kimberly-Clark and the company that owns Tylenol have announced an enormous merger today. What's your reaction to this deal and the outlook for M&A activity before the end of the year?
Well, I think we're late, certainly in the year, going into November. But mergers and acquisitions, if the interest rates come down in December, it'll be very, very active. And I'm hoping rates don't come down by much, because then we risk having a melt up, which is what we saw in the late 1990s during the internet bubble, and it ended quite badly. Now, for a traditional company like Kimberly-Clark to make an acquisition, that makes sense, but we're also seeing spin-offs. Other companies like Kraft Heinz are splitting into two companies to diversify. Same thing's happening with FedEx. It's happening at Johnson & Johnson. Their orthopedics division is spinning off. So there's mergers and acquisitions, but there's also divesting.
All right, we got a government shutdown. At what point will that have an impact, you think, in the financial markets, which, of course, have just shrugged it off at this point? And then this week, we're told the Supreme Court could make an important ruling on whether President Trump's tariffs are valid and whether the U.S. Treasury might have to refund $1 trillion in tariff money. So we got another important week here.
We absolutely do, Frank, and we have to brace for what the Supreme Court may decide is really a congressional decision, tariffs, that is. And we're into day 34 now of the government shutdown. Tomorrow will be, even with the longest shutdown in history. There have been some 22 of these over the past 50 years. But the shutdown has all the statistical agencies on, they're dark. And investors, business leaders, officials at the Federal Reserve, they've had to go without any of this data that's necessary for making key decisions. The Supreme Court won't have this problem with tariffs, but I certainly hope the government reopens in time.
All right. In the meantime, can we buy stock in the LA Dodgers? Their stock certainly went up over the weekend.
Yeah, I love that. That Game 7 was just unbelievable. The Blue Jays pretty much won that game 4 times by my count, but the Dodgers wouldn't let them. And it was an amazing, maybe the best World Series in recent history. Absolutely
amazing is right. And at this point, Gabriel Wisdom, let me ask you the big question here as we kick off the month of November here, and what's been an amazing year for pretty much everything, but especially the stock market. Any specific places where you're putting money now and or taking it off the table?
Well, I like the spin-off plays right here, Frank, and there's a number of them on deck. I mentioned a few, but Honeywell, a symbol HON, just last Friday did spin off Solstice Advanced Materials, symbol is SOLS. This is a pure play specialty materials company. they make high-performance solutions for semiconductor manufacturing, data center, thermal management, nuclear energy, defense, and life sciences. And usually spin-offs don't have enough analysts following them because it's a new entity, being projected off of an old company like Honeywell, and the shares tend to not do so well in the first few months. So I'm looking at Solstice Advanced Materials. I also like Honeywell. I think it's the end of the big conglomerate era. We've seen this with General Electric, United Technologies. These companies have undergone similar transformations, separating their major divisions. I think that's going to be a major theme going into 2026.
All right, another major theme of the holiday season is approaching here now that Halloween is done, which is one of the big retail holidays, by the way, of the year, and just came off of Halloween. What about the retailers here heading into the holiday season?
I'm concerned about the retailers because unemployment is probably ticking up. Now, we'll know better once the Bureau of Labor Statistics and the other agencies are able to give us the real numbers, but we know that there are fewer people that are likely to be shopping in the U.S. this holiday. As Yardeni pointed out, U.S. payments volume was up 8%. That's slightly above the third quarter, and e-commerce is growing faster, than face-to-face spending. But now we're seeing consumers pull back. You mentioned a couple of other surveys, and there's straws in the wind. I think we have to be cautious here.
All right, where would you be placing your bets under those circumstances, on the high end or on the low end this holiday season?
I think it'd be the high end because the people who can afford it are trading up. That's what the private sector data is telling us. So the high-end retailers tend to do pretty well. And also the retailers that are leveraging off of artificial intelligence, like Walmart has done. That was a very positive step. My prediction would be Target, which is at a 52-week low, will likely be the next to introduce some AI element.
That's very interesting, and Walmart recently hit an all-time high. Gabriel Wisdom, thank you very much for joining us live here. This is Gabriel Wisdom, Managing Director at American Money Management, based here in Southern California, and author of Wisdom on Value Investing, live with us here on Mottek On Money on 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues, 790 KABC. Mixed start to the new week and the new month on Wall Street, with the Dow coming in for a closing loss today of 226 points, settling at 47,337. The S&P 500 of 12 at 6,852, and the NASDAQ gained 110 points at 23,835. First trading day of November, ending mixed with big tech names, including Amazon and NVIDIA, back in the spotlight, both at or near all-time highs. NVIDIA popping more than $4 today at $206 and change, and Amazon up nearly $10 at $254. Crypto is under pressure to kick off the new week. Bitcoin all of a sudden back down around 106,000 here at 106,609. Ethereum at 3,594. Doge at the moment back to 17 cents. Taking a look at analog gold. Gold is down nearly $8 now, back to $4,006.70 an ounce. Silver down 33 cents, back to $47.72. In the oil patch, we see ExxonMobil down 60 cents at $113 and change. Chevron down nearly 4 at $154.04 as oil is hovering near $60 a barrel, down to 8 cents right now at $60.97 a barrel. Among some of the other high flyers, Tesla moving up nearly 12 at $468 and change. Netflix pulling back nearly 19 at $1,100.09 a share. Among the crypto-related equities, we see iBit down $1.77 at $60.53 at the close, and Bitto down 52 cents at $16.72. Apple at $269.05. Looks like it moved higher today. Among the retailers, Costco popping more than 16 today at $9.28 and change. Macy's at 45 cents at $19.94. Walmart at 41 cents at $101.59. And now the latest news on 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues, 790 KABC. Big election tomorrow here in California on Prop 50. California Democrats pushing for Prop 50. Republicans solidly against Prop 50, which would implement a new congressional map which passed the state legislature in August for the next 3 election cycles. After 2030 U.S. Census, the state's Independent Redistricting Commission would resume drawing maps. At least that's what we're told. This proposition could flip as many as 5 U.S. House seats from Republican to Democratic control here in California. Keeping an eye on that and other issues nationwide, let's bring in Patrick Gleason now, the Vice President of State Affairs at Americans for Tax Reform. Patrick, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
Great to be with you, Frank.
Or you got the big picture where you are there in Washington. Why don't you size up what's going to happen tomorrow?
Yeah, a lot of consequential decisions to be made by voters tomorrow in this odd-year election here. You know, you mentioned the redistricting measure on California's ballot. You know, New York, like California, lost a congressional seat in the 2020 reapportionment process. And like California, New York is projected to lose more seats, 2 more seats in the next post-2030 congressional reapportionment process. And that was the case before New York City looked like it was going to elect a socialist mayor who wants to raise taxes that would further exacerbate the exodus of taxpayers we've seen going on for years in New York. So, you know, they were already projected to lose more population and congressional clout as a result, but that was before Mamdani, with, polling showing Mamdani projected to be the mayor of New York. He's campaigned on raising taxes on individuals and businesses. So if successful, or even just the threat of it, we think is going to chase a lot of people out of the state. And you have that combined with across the river, across the Hudson in New Jersey, you have Jack Ciattarelli, a Republican who has pledged not to raise any taxes if he's elected governor. He's looking strong. He's looking like he has a good chance to win. So New Yorkers who want a haven to get away from Mamdani's tax increases, but don't want to go as far as Florida, might have a haven in New Jersey if Ciattarelli wins this next Tuesday. Another thing to look out there for, though, in New Jersey, aside from the fact that Ciattarelli has pledged not to raise taxes, another California tie-in there is California, as you know, has cap-and-trade program that drives up the utility bills and gas prices. Well, New Jersey does as well. They're part of a regional cap-and-trade program. And in addition to pledging to not raise taxes if elected governor, Jack Ciattarelli has also pledged that he will pull New Jersey out of that regional cap-and-trade program in order to bring down utility bills and energy prices overall for New Jersey. So that's what we're seeing in the Northeast. So a lot of interesting things going on there and how they interact. And then you look at on another side of the country, down on the southern border, Texas, second most populous state in the country after California. A lot of really important and really interesting ballot measures that are going to be decided by Lone Star State voters this time.
Michael Rosenbaum and Tom Welling take you behind the scenes of one of the greatest shows of all time.
They're an ultimate rewatch podcast. We're in the midst of season 7, and
hold on. Obviously, we had a very successful television show for 10 years. That was Superman based,
but we had to make everyone believe that you were Clark.
I got to be honest. I was surprised at the end of this episode that I wasn't.
I was too.
Talkville, the Smallville rewatch podcast.
I'm not sure I knew when I was filming it that I was not me.
Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Tuesday. And why those are worth paying attention to for Californians, New Yorkers, other people around the country is if those ballot measures pass, as polling shows is likely to be the case, Texas is going to become an even more attractive place for individuals, families, businesses looking to flee high tax, high cost of living states like California, like Texas. And just to give you a quick summary, and then I'll be quiet and take any questions you have, but quick summary of what we're seeing on the Texas ballot tomorrow. 3 separate measures would put constitutional prohibitions on 3 separate taxes that are sought by progressives in large part. 1, it would ban a capital gains tax from ever being enacted in Texas. 2, it would also ban a death tax from ever being enacted in Texas. And 3, would ban the enactment of a financial transactions tax in Texas. So you'd have 3 constitutionally prohibited new categories of taxation, all things that are targeted by progressives, and would just further drive the differentiate Texas from New York, which is a state it's now looking to compete with Texas's new stock exchange in Dallas that's going to launch next year. The aim there is to compete with the New York Stock Exchange, and it's going to be even more competitive if Texas voters tomorrow, as polling shows is likely the case, prohibit financial transactions taxes and prohibit a capital gains tax. That would be on top of the fact that Texas, one of the 8 states with no income tax, already has a constitutional prohibition against a wage income tax. So you take that direction Texas is heading in, the direction New York is poised to go in if Mamdani wins election on Tuesday, as polling shows is likely to be the case. And you're seeing quite the contrast in the messaging that New York and Texas are sending to investors.
See it tonight, read about it tomorrow, but hear it now on Mottek On Money on 790 KABC. Speaking live with Patrick Gleason, Vice President of State Affairs at Americans for Tax Reform. That is big news with Dallas coming up big, competing with Wall Street, and already Goldman Sachs is building an enormous campus there to be completed in a couple of years. It'll accommodate about 5,000 employees, making Dallas that company's second largest U.S. office after New York. What kind of a disaster are we facing here if Mamdani does become the mayor of New York, and what impact do you think that'll have on the financial markets as well as on tax policy?
Well, it's not going to be good. The good news is he's going to be constrained a lot by reality. He's going to be constrained a lot by what he's able to do, by what he needs state authorization to do. But there's no denying there's going to be real pain for New Yorkers. And so and you mentioned the investment we were seeing by some of the major financial institutions in Dallas in the lead up to the stock exchange launching there. That was in advance of, before Mamdani even came on the scene, before it looked like New York was going to have a socialist mayor. That was the case. And so this is just going to exacerbate and speed up existing trends I think we've seen that have picked up in the aftermath of the pandemic. But it's surprising to see that this could be the case, but we'll see tomorrow. If polling is accurate, he should cruise to a victory. But it's going to just further differentiate the state like New York overall, particularly its financial center, New York City, from what we're seeing in Florida, not just Texas, but Florida, Tennessee, not just Texas, but the other no income tax states like Tennessee, like Texas. They're still, like Florida, they're still finding ways to enact further tax relief that makes them even more competitive. And so, and not only that, but you've seen states across the country, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, they are all moving to phase out their income taxes. So what New York and Mamdani are looking to do is not happening in a vacuum. And so that should constrain him somewhat, but there's no way to sugarcoat it. He's made clear what he wants to do, which is raise taxes. And if he wins, he can claim a mandate on that. But I think he will be constrained a bit by reality, particularly if as people predict, if we see exacerbated exodus of people, particularly high income folks and also employers, that's going to have a big revenue hit on New York City. So it's going to limit what he's able to do. So he will be constricted by reality, by what he needs to get authorization from the state for. That's the good news for New Yorkers. The other good news for New Yorkers is they do have other options. That's the great thing about this great nation of ours is, you have a lot of different options and where you want to live and the type of government you want to live under. And so, folks can find a less costly government not that far away, or they can even, travel across the country or even just, across the region. So I would just say what's going to happen is not happening in a vacuum. So that's good news for New Yorkers.
All right, in the meantime, Florida's going to be packed like sardines, right? Certainly their tax policies have been very, very friendly, doing things like suspending the sales tax during back-to-school season, helping families out by doing things like that. When was the last time we heard anything like that in California or in New York?
Well, not only that, Frank, but Governor Ron DeSantis has made it a top priority of his to get one single ballot measure on the 2026 ballot in Florida that would put property taxes on the path to phase out in Florida. So he's looking to completely phase out property taxes. That's already with the advantage of no income tax. And Florida, has roughly the same population as New York, but their government is half expensive. Their budget is half the size of New York's. So, the good news is there's options for people, whether it's Californians or New Yorkers who are sick of the high taxes or who are sick of living under a high cost of government. We do have other options, whether it's Texas, Tennessee, or Florida. And that's the great thing about this federal system we live under.
Did I see you mention Colorado also in your Forbes article?
Yeah, so that's another state we could see a real big contrast. Colorado has been an outlier amongst blue states in that even though it has progressive Democrats who dominate state government there, they have not been able to raise taxes to onerous levels like we've seen in California, New York, Illinois, and other states because they have what's called a taxpayer bill of rights. Constitutional protection requires all tax hikes to be put to voters also limits state spending growth to population plus inflation. So despite progressive domination of state government like you have in Sacramento, they are really constrained in Colorado. Unfortunately, they're making an attempt to loosen up this taxpayer safeguard that's been on the books since 1992. There are two measures on the ballot, Proposition LL and MM, and both those, long and short, would ask for authorization to raise taxes through the limiting of deductions, and would also seek to exempt that increased taxes and the increased spending it would authorize, would seek to exempt that from the state spending cap, therefore authorizing further levels of spending moving forward, and also preventing taxpayer refunds that would likely happen, because when Colorado, when revenue collections come in above their spending cap, their revenue cap, they have to refund that to taxpayers, and they've issued a number of taxpayer refunds over the past decade. One of the measures voters will decide in Colorado tomorrow would suspend refunds for this one category, for this one revenue stream. So it would be a real weakening of the state's taxpayer bill of rights, which has, despite Democratic domination of state government, prevented it from going the way of California. So keep an eye on that. It could be a real chink in the armor if that gets weakened tomorrow.
All right, Patrick Gleason, Vice President of State Affairs at Americans for Tax Reform. Till Grover Norquist, we said hello, Patrick, and thank you very much for joining us live this afternoon.
You have a great afternoon, Frank. Take care.
Thanks very much. And out to the freeways now, 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues, 790 KABC. LA still in the afterglow. The Dodgers win in the World Series. Well, they hit an economic home run, too. LA was packed today in downtown Los Angeles for the parade and celebration. Let's bring in Mark Wilbur, business leader and big Dodger fan, founding member and former chair of LA BizFed, chairman of Employers Group, and former associate dean of the USC Marshall School of Business. Mark Wilbur, thank you very much for coming to the line here this afternoon.
Thanks for having me on, Frank. It's great to be back.
All right. Since you talk to a lot of people, what is the business community reaction to the Dodgers' victory over the weekend?
I can't imagine it's anything but two thumbs up and, some fist pumps in the air. So it's, it doesn't get much better. And those two games, I felt like I used up several of my 9 lives watching those last two games. Goodness gracious. That was tight, as tight as it's going to get.
And then, boom, it was over, and we won.
Yeah. It was just, I coached hockey for many, many years, and that's the way sports are. Sometimes you can have it. I feel semi bad for the Toronto people because, hockey's their number one sport. And of course they want the Maple Leafs to win. And that's just an endless frustration since 1967. And then these last two games, everything was stacked up against the Dodgers. Even in the games, it was stacked up against them, where you're thinking there's no way they're getting out of this. And then they did over and over and over again. And it was just, it was quite something. It was quite a weekend. LAFC won and eliminated Austin from the playoffs, and they advanced to the semifinals. USC won, so that's always good. I think UCLA had a bye week this week, if I remember right, but maybe not.
Hollywood ending, certainly, for the World Series. And what is seen there in downtown Los Angeles, total joy and celebration, and certainly got to be good for business. Too bad we can't buy stock in the Dodgers. We were joking about that earlier this hour, but if we could, their stock soared today.
It would be good, and as long as the Guggenheim Group, holds on to it, then it would be great if it was a stock. But like all things, there's the highs and then there's the lows, and I feel for it. In Toronto last year, I think was in last place, and then this year is in the World Series. So it's rags to riches, riches to rags, and you kind of never know with sports. You can get hot. They certainly did. It's a great feeling. I think it lifts everybody's spirits in a city that's been through a lot in the last, couple of years.
Especially this year.
With the fires. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And speaking of that, I know you've been focused on that along with everyone there on all of the business groups, really. Mark Wilbur, what is the assessment here on that recovery now as that tough work continues?
Well, the recovery has been, honestly, Frank, I hate to say it, but it's been an abysmal mess. it is turning into everything people worried about. The pace of permitting is just not there at all. And so, now I understand there's lawsuits starting to build up against the city of LA coming out of the Palisades. And it's not the end of it. There's going to be more. People are super frustrated. And of course, a lot of people just sold and bailed out. People can say, oh, maybe they bailed out too soon or what have you. But honestly, this is going to be, at the pace our city is going at this and the dysfunctionality of it, feels like it's going to be decades long before the Palisades ever even remotely looks like what it used to be.
All right,
and
tomorrow.
As well as the Eaton area.
That's right, in Altadena area. So tomorrow, voters will be going to the polls. Looks like the only big thing on the ballot is this Prop 50. What's the buzz among the business folks regarding Prop 50?
Well, I'm completely humored by the commercials that Gavin runs because he makes it sound like there has never been gerrymandering in our state before. And this is something you know as well as I do, Frank. That's been going on for years to gain more Democrat seats. So, I don't even care what party you're from. You should vote no on it just so there isn't, more grabbing at the well of seats. I think they put that commission in, that independent commission in for a reason to try and bring some sanity to it. And honestly, at some point, I hope all the states get on this page. There are states out there, Frank, like Maine, that has like 45% Republican voters, and because of gerrymandering, has no representation from the GOP in the House. The same with New Mexico. No representation, even though they have 48% voters are Republican. And so, there's something wrong with all of that. Texas isn't right. California isn't right. Maine isn't right. New Mexico, Connecticut. All these states where people are chain yanking, the gerrymandering to get an illegal advantage over people. And technically it's legal, but when you look at it, it's not right. And people know it's not right. And so I hope our Supreme Court gets involved and just gets rid of all of it, tip to toe across the country. And, there's some other cases about requiring IDs that are coming too, that I hope that get through the Supreme Court.
Yep.
It's the only thing we can get to get the sanity, Frank.
Yep. And speaking of the Supreme Court, could be a big week on the Supreme Court ruling on President Trump's tariffs and whether the Treasury will have to refund $1 trillion. So it might be on the pins and needles this week. That's going to be an important ruling. What's your thoughts on the latest tariff news and what's happening on the jobs and the economic front?
Well, that first guest you had, I think, hit the nail on the head, is that, everybody's kind of on pins and needles and waiting for, for the Supreme Court decision on that. I actually hope that they side with the president. It doesn't even matter what side of the aisle you're from, because I think the economic chaos that would instantly create would be problematic for obvious reasons. But I think it's one of those things where, we suddenly have a business person in office and they're trying to create a balance so that it isn't so one-sided for foreign countries we're doing business with, where we're buying favors and buying things with our tariffs. People don't even see it, Frank. They don't understand that that's taking money out of our country. And Trump is always just trying to get a right balance so that it's fair. And he's been doing a great job. This is long overdue. Anybody that's close to these numbers knows that this is long, long overdue.
Mark, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon, kicking off a big week here and reacting to all the big news here. Mark Wilbur, business giant here in the Los Angeles area, founding member and former chair of LA BizFed, chairman of Employers Group, and former associate dean of the USC Marshall School of Business. Mark, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
Thanks for having me on, Frank. Always a joy.
Likewise. Thank you very much. Stay tuned now for the News Blitz, 790 KBC.
Family Matters amplifies the loudest and the proudest political voices in the Black community today.
What's up, guys? I'm CJ Pearson. There's so many incredible perspectives here in the Black community that you're going to hear from each and every week.
Because faith matters, country matters, and family matters.
This is exactly what the mainstream media was missing by not actually going to Black churches, going to Black barbershops, talking to the people at the forefront of this change in the community. Let me start here.
Family Matters with CJ Pearson.
Each and every week, we'll see you here. Talk to you soon.
Follow and listen on your favorite platform.